I honestly had no idea that the show was spelled the way that it is, but with the recent success that I've seen from the previously done deep dives, I figured we continue on and keep going with deep dives in WCW 1998 until we pay off the big story, and the big story is building up WCW, not correcting where the ship was going, but trying to prolong the inevitable just a little bit longer. Because, in my opinion, based on what we did in the end of 1990s, at the end of 1997, we could go all the way through 1998 to Starcade 1998, and we could build WCW back up and move them in a little bit of a different direction. But this is Sold Out 1998. We ended 1997 on a high note with Sting winning the World Championship and Bret Hart being the guest referee. I, for one, think next to World War III, next to Road Wild, Sold Out was one of the concepts that eventually should have been replaced by a different pay-per-view. And it shouldn't have taken until 2001 for it to happen. But that's just me. But now we move to WCW, the pay-per-view card from WCW Sold Out 1998, and we look down at the cruiserweights. In my opinion, the cruiserweight action tonight is one of the matches that I would keep because it's always good to get the show started on a hot note. Or a high note. But I would also keep Chris Benoit and Raven, giving Benoit a solid victory before moving into a new feud. But the first focus for Bret the Hitman Hart is an unexpected direction, because he is feuding with Ric Flair. He is going to feud with Ric Flair, and that is another one of the matches that I would keep. But they would main event instead. And following this match, following tonight, Ric Flair will go on a hiatus. But on top of feuding with Ric Flair, he has caught the attention of fellow Canadian Chris Jericho, as Chris is trying to get himself noticed. Chris is trying to get himself noticed, and wants to, well, basically, Chris wants Bret Hart to take him on as a protege. He wants to form a faction with the Hitman. He wants the Hart Foundation in WCW. Jericho would still win the Cruiserweight Championship from Rey Mysterio, adding a little credibility to him as he pursues the attention of the Hitman, with the idea of eventually, or potentially, a feud with Jericho and Bret Hart, or Bret Hart choosing to form a faction with Jericho and whomever else can be brought in. But that's for another day. Booker T and Rick Martel is one of the matches that I would keep. Another one of the matches that I would keep, because Booker T is starting to ascend up the card. He's a fresh new face in the championship title picture. And, I mean, he's got to do something with Stevie Ray on the shelf, because at this point, Stevie was on the shelf and would be on the shelf until the spring, I do believe. So, I mean, I don't see a reason why Booker T could not be television champion and start his ascension up the card. Because it would also eventually give us somebody else in the upper mid card to play with, other than the overexposed top of the card that needed some new, fresh faces. Larry Zbyszko versus Scott Hall, the 6-man tag team match, Ray Traylor and the Steiners against the NWO, Kevin Nash versus the Giant, and Lex Luger versus Randy Savage are all out for now. As I'm going to redo the rest of the card. Basically, the reason why I kept every match thus far is there was a point to every match on the show. Jericho wants to prove a point to Bret Hart, so he wins the Cruiserweight title. Chris Benoit is eventually going to join the feud with Bret Hart and Chris Jericho, so he needs a little bit more momentum. The 8-man Cruiserweight tag team match to open the show is just designed to get the show off to a hot start with the Cruiserweights. Booker T is ascending up the card. He needs momentum. He needs a credible win. Everybody at this point knows who Rick Martel is, so credibility. Credibility, that name is Booker T, as he continues to prove that he belongs as television champion. The first match that I would add is an 8-man tag team match, and the 8-man tag team match consists of Luger and the Giant, the Steiners, Bagwell and Norton, actually, wait, I'm just noticing now that the Steiners are actually tag team champions at this point. You know what? We'll make it for the titles. We'll make it for the tag belts. It'll be Bagwell and Norton, the Steiners, Luger and the Giant, and Public Enemy. And the big conversation of the match is not that the Steiners retain. It is that Luger turns heel on the Giant. And the reason why Luger turns heel is not to join the NWO. It's because in the spring and the summertime, we'll have Kevin Nash, Randy Savage, and other members of the New World Order turning babyface to cover the fact that Luger's a heel. And also, it opens up the opportunity for the Giant to move another step further up the totem pole as a top babyface, even though Bret Hart may be in the way. But it decrowds it just a little bit with Bret Hart and Diamond Dallas Page and the Stinger carrying most of the weight, with Ric Flair going away, with Luger turning heel. The Giant is now one of the top baby faces, alongside Diamond Dallas Page, Bret Hart, and Sting. But eventually, the heel and face rosters are going to balance out a little bit more, with members of the NWO turning babyface. But the Steiners will successfully You know what? Scrap the Steiners out of it. Scrap the Steiners out of it. It makes more sense to do four corners match and have somebody gain the victory where they can go to Nitro and challenge the Steiners so you get two matches out of one. Um, so it'll be Public Enemy, it'll be Buff and Scott Norton, and you know what? No, it'll be Conan and Buff Bagwell, and the reason why it'll be Conan and Buff Bagwell I'll get to in a second. But it'll be Luger and the Giant, Public Enemy, Conan and Buff Bagwell, and I want to say a different team, but I think I'm going to go with High Voltage. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with High Voltage. You know what? No. I'm going to go with Steven Regal and Bobby Eaton. Or Steven Regal and Dave Taylor, sorry. And basically, the reason why I picked Conan and Buff Bagwell is because, again, it could be a part of the bigger picture where Conan is going to side with the Wolfpack and move over to the other side of the NWO. This will have a built-in feud for Conan, so he could feud with Buff Bagwell. When the fracture is complete. Hollywood Hogan is gone at this point after after Starrcade. Hogan is gone after Starrcade. But that is the fifth match. The sixth match would be Zbyszko versus Scott Hall. With if Larry Zbyszko loses, then he must join the NWO for 30 days. Or he must join the NWO for 60 days. And then that adds to a little bit. It adds to things a little bit. Because it makes a hell of a lot more sense doing that than having Dusty Rhodes join the NWO like they did. If anything, I'd hold off Dusty coming back and use Dusty's on-air role, or Dusty. I'd take Dusty off of I'd take him off of TV. I'd take him off of color, from pay-per-view for pay-per-view, and just let it go to Bobby Heenan. If you want somebody new, then Lee Marshall could hold down the fort for some of the matches, while Zbyszko's out of the booth. But it would also give WCW a different sound having Larry out of the booth and seeing him miserable as a part of the NWO, because it would give the Black and White a much needed minor victory to keep some credibility and keep some of the momentum. Even though at this point they'd be bulletproof, it keeps some momentum going in their general direction, and it allows Scott Hall to be like, well, I did this. But then we move to match number 7, and I'd give match number 7, I'd give it to Randy Savage and let him have a squash match. In the weeks leading up to this, I would say that Randy Savage is the first to start showing that he is doubting the direction of the NWO and is starting to show that he may be the first person to jump ship. That he may be the first person to jump ship from the NWO, because in any match that he's had associated with the New World Order, he's lost. But he says, for tonight, I am a free agent, and he gets the victory for the first time on pay-per-view in the last couple of months, which starts having the wheels turn in his head that maybe he doesn't need the NWO. Maybe he could be just as good on his own. And then we move to the semi-main event, which the semi-main event is the hottest man in the company, Diamond Dallas Page, against the interim leader of the New World Order, Kevin Nash, as Kevin Nash is the one person that Diamond Dallas Page has not defeated within the ranks of the New World Order, and he's one of the high-ranking members of the NWO, so it makes for another credible victory, as the momentum of Diamond Dallas Page continues to build and continues to fester, especially after, mind you, if this is the first video you're watching from this deep dive, I just want to catch you up and say that Diamond Dallas Page defeated Randy Savage in their rivalry, which ended at Halloween Havoc in the main event. Diamond Dallas Page then proceeded to win World War III for a future opportunity at the World Heavyweight Championship. I think, if I remember correctly, DDP also won an 8-man tag team match at Starrcade, if I remember. But I'm not 100% sure. Either way, DDP, every step of the way, has defeated the NWO. And tonight is no different when he drops Kevin Nash with the Diamond Cutter. And then we move to the main event, Bret Hart versus Ric Flair in Bret Hart's first WCW match. This is also when we advertise that Bret Hart is not going to be on Nitro, but that Bret Hart is going to be on Thunder. Because Nitro is when the match ends with Bret Hart getting a victory, and then Ric Flair takes the mic at the end of the match, distraught and unsure and frustrated about the last couple of months, and says, tomorrow night on Nitro, I have an announcement to make that will catch everyone off guard, and I want to make sure that all you people here tonight are watching tomorrow on Nitro, because it is an announcement that you certainly won't want to miss. Clicked on the wrong date. I clicked on 1997. No, I did click on 1998. This was on a Saturday. The WCW's pay-per-view was on a Saturday. Huh. I never knew that. And then Flair mentions by name that the fans in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum will hear everything that the Nature Boy has to say, as the Nature Boy is going to insinuate retirement because the last couple of months have drained him and have taken everything out of him. And that loss to Bret Hart, that build-up, was all he needed to realize that he needs a break. That maybe, just maybe, he's not the Nature Boy anymore. Bret Hart does walk out, does not have a microphone. Arn Anderson walks out with him. Arn Anderson seems puzzled, but Bret Hart walks out, shakes Ric Flair's hand after their match last night, the night before on Nitro, and Ric Flair leaves. And that, my friends, is why Bret Hart is not spotlighted on Nitro, but is instead spotlighted on Thunder, because Ric Flair is the focus of Nitro. Sting and Diamond Dallas Page are the focus of Nitro. And the NWO is the focus of Nitro. Because I also noticed in the build-up, where was it? On the debut episode of Thunder, which means that the debut episode of Thunder was held before Sold Out. So that means Thunder is a broadcast. And I want to establish, basically separate. We're going to build this up on one show, we're going to build this up on the other, to give people a reason to watch Nitro, to give people a reason to watch Thunder. And with Bret Hart being the focus one week, the return of Hollywood Hogan would be the focus the following week on Thunder. And I know somebody might say you're taking away from Nitro. You got to spend a little time, you got to break a few eggs to establish an identity for a new show. And that includes a new announce team, which I would have Mike Today and Bobby Heenan be the exclusive announce team for Thunder, and Tony Schiavone be on Nitro. I think if I remember correctly, it might have been Mike Today and Larry Zbyszko at first, or Mike Today and Bobby Heenan were the announce team on Thunder, but either way, this is what I would pattern out for Sold Out. I would keep the first 4 matches. I would have an 4 corners tag team match, Public Enemy, Conan and Buff Bagwell, the Conan and Buff Bagwell, Luger and the Giant, and Dave Taylor and Steven Regal join the 8-man tag. Public Enemy would win. Luger and the Giant would lose because Luger would turn heel on the Giant, setting up a feud between Luger and the Giant. And also having a heel that stands alone from the NWO. A top heel that stands alone from the NWO. Match 7 would give Randy Savage a victory, his first standalone win since joining the NWO, after months of falling short and losing, being associated in some way, shape, or form with the New World Order. Kevin Nash would come up short against DDP as DDP's momentum continues to build to his world title match against Sting at Super Brawl in February. And then the main event is Bret Hart versus Ric Flair, with Bret Hart winning his WCW debut, and then we'll address Chris Jericho and Jericho's attempts to form a faction with the Hitman, or a mentor-protege, a teacher-student partnership of sorts. He will address that on Thunder, just like Ric Flair will make the announcement that I mentioned on Nitro. Again, I am not trying to fix WCW. I am not trying to prevent what happened in 2001 from happening. I'm just trying to not leave money on the table like WCW did in this window of time. Because if you think about it, by early 1998, Hogan could have used some time off. By early 1998, Ric Flair could have used some time off and not being dropped off in a desert and then ending up in a nut house like they did. I am not going to go show by show and day by day and week by week and month by month, but I will go pay-per-view by pay-per-view and try and explain away a background a little bit with every match. So if you agree, if you're enjoying this, let me know down in the comment section below. If you like my layout for WCW Sold Out 1998, let me know down in the comment section. And if you want to keep seeing this, keep supporting this series like you have been, I very much appreciate it because I am very much enjoying it. And until next time, I will see you in the next one.